Okay, picture this. You're shipping code, you're getting praise, maybe you're even leading a project. By every external measure, you look like a successful developer.
Right. Everything looks great from the outside.
But internally, there's that little voice, that constant whisper. What if they find out I don't actually know what I'm doing? What if today's the day they realize I'm just faking it?
Mm-hmm. That feeling is incredibly common.
Yeah. And if that resonates with you, well, welcome. This is a deep dive into a phenomenon that touches just a staggering number of people in tech.
It really does.
We're talking about imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And the material you've shared really digs into why it's so incredibly common, specifically among developers. We're talking like an estimated 70% feeling this at some point.
70%, that's huge.
It is. So our mission today is basically to pull out the most vital insights and practical strategies from these article excerpts we've been looking at to help you understand this feeling and, crucially, figure out how to navigate it.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Let's just start with the basics. What exactly is imposter syndrome? Can we nail that down?
Sure. So at its core, if you go back to the original definition by, I think, the psychologist Clance and Imes, it's not just like having self-doubt now and then. Everyone has that.
Right.
This is more of a persistent, sometimes really intense feeling like you're an intellectual fraud.
Fraud, wow.
Yeah, you feel like a phony. You're convinced that any success you have is just down to luck or maybe charm, or that you've somehow tricked people. It's not seen as being about your actual skills or competence.
Okay, so your brain just won't accept the evidence.
Exactly. And that's the paradox, right? And it's why we're seeing it so much in the sources talking about developers. It seems to hit high-achieving people disproportionately.
Huh. That's counterintuitive.
It is. You've got all this evidence of your capability, finished projects, good feedback, problems you've solved, but you still feel like you're just one tough question or maybe one obscure bug away from being completely exposed.
One Google search away from disaster.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So why tech then? Why is this feeling such a recurring theme in software development specifically? What is it about this industry?
Well, the environment itself, it plays a massive role. Software development is just defined by constant change, sometimes really radical change.
Right. New frameworks, languages.
Exactly. New languages, frameworks, tools, best practices, they pop up at this relentless pace. So you master one thing, you feel good about it, and suddenly, wham, the industry seems to have moved on.
Yeah, I can see that.
We saw that example, Sarah, right? 5 years in, solid developer, knew her stuff, especially React class components. Then hooks came along.
Ah, hooks. Yeah.
A really fundamental shift in how React works. And instead of just feeling like, okay, new thing to learn, it triggered this feeling that all her expertise was suddenly outdated. Made her question if she even understood development fundamentals anymore.
Wow.
It's that feeling, that the ground is constantly shifting beneath your feet.
Like trying to build a skyscraper on quicksand.
Yeah.
And the culture around code itself, that seems to play a part too.
Oh, absolutely. The sources mention something they call the perfectionist's paradox.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, we hold up these ideals, right? Like clean code, elegant architecture, effortless problem solving. But the day-to-day reality of building software, it's often messy.
Oh yeah, debugging for hours.
Exactly. Hours debugging, wrestling with legacy stuff, hitting walls, and let's be honest, constantly searching online docs or Stack Overflow.
Guilty.
We all are. But what happens is junior devs or even your peers, they often only see the final polished result. They don't see the struggle, the failed attempts, the messy process that actually got you to that elegant solution.
Right, the hidden iceberg.
Perfectly put.
Right.
It creates this distorted view that, real competent developers just know everything and code flawlessly first time. So anyone who struggles feels like they must be inadequate.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Then the sources, they really dug into some specific ways this shows up for developers, didn't they?
Yeah. They did, yeah. They highlighted several unique vulnerabilities. One is what's called the endless learning treadmill.
Sounds tiring.
It is. The sheer amount of tech you feel you should know creates this perpetual learning debt. You feel like you're always playing catch-up, never truly mastering anything because the goalposts keep moving.
Okay.
Think about that example, Mark. Spent years becoming a MongoDB expert, really knew his stuff.
Right.
Then his company pivots, moves to PostgreSQL, and his imposter voice immediately says, I wasted 2 years. A real expert would have known this was coming or would have known the right database all along.
instead of seeing the transferable skills.
Exactly. It completely ignores that he gained invaluable skills in data modeling, systems thinking, database management in general, stuff that's totally transferable. The focus just snaps to what you don't know yet, not the breadth you've actually gained.
It's that feeling of being a jack of all trades, master of none, but amplified because there are just so many trades in tech.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. Then there's the open source paradox.
Okay, paradox. How so?
Well, platforms like GitHub, Stack Overflow, they're amazing for collaboration, for learning, fantastic tools.
Definitely.
But they also create massive transparency. Your code's out there, potentially for public critique.
Right. Pull requests.
Exactly. So feedback on a pull request, which is really meant to just align your contribution with the project standards, like in Alex's example, contributing to that Python library. That feedback can get twisted by the imposter voice into, oh my God, my code is terrible. I'm clearly not good enough for this community.
So tools designed for good, for community, can actually end up feeding the self-criticism.
Precisely. And right alongside that is the comparison trap.
Ah, social media.
You guessed it, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever platform. They become highlight reels. You see your peers launching amazing side projects, getting promotions, tweeting about how they mastered the latest framework in, like, weekend.
Well, you're stuck on a bug.
Exactly. You're comparing their carefully curated, shiny external successes to your own messy internal world of doubts and struggles and fixed typo commits.
It's the shiny LinkedIn profile versus your actual Git log.
Yeah.
Perfect analogy. And then the shift to remote work hasn't exactly helped either. They called it the remote work amplifier.
How does that amplify it?
Well, in an office, you might casually see a senior dev looking puzzled, maybe muttering to themselves, wrestling with a problem, or admitting they need to look something up. You see the process a bit more.
Right, those little moments of shared struggle.
Yeah. Remote work often hides those.
Yeah.
You mostly see the polished output in Slack or the confident presentation on a video call. It just reinforces that false idea that everyone else totally has it together all the time.
Okay, wow. Those are some significant environmental factors. And this feeling, it's not just a feeling, right? The material points out some real costs, some negative impacts.
Oh, absolutely. It takes a serious toll, both professionally and personally.
Let's talk professional first. How does it show up? So, it can manifest in a few key ways. There's what they call the silent contributor.
Okay.
That's where you hold back ideas or solutions in meetings, maybe because you're afraid they'll reveal some gap in your knowledge, even if the idea is good.
So you just stay quiet.
Yeah. Or you might become the over-preparer, spending way too much time researching even simple tasks because you're terrified of being caught not knowing something.
Right. Analysis paralysis almost.
Kinda, yeah. And imposter syndrome can definitely make you the opportunity avoider. Meaning you turn down promotions or speaking opportunities or challenging new projects because you just don't feel qualified or ready, even when objectively you probably are.
Holding yourself back.
Totally. And finally, it leads to being the credit deflector.
Oh, it was nothing or it was luck.
Exactly. Attributing your successes to anything but yourself, luck, timing, other people's help. You don't own your contribution, which means you never build that solid foundation of earned achievement in your own mind.
Wow. It sounds like it actively sabotages your career growth and impact.
It really can, yeah.
And what about the personal toll?
That's heavy, too. The constant fear of being found out leads to chronic stress and anxiety. Your brain's threat detection system is basically on high alert all the time.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. And ironically, that constant stress can actually impair your cognitive function, make it harder to think clearly right when you need to.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And this often drives burnout and overwork because you're trying to compensate for this perceived inadequacy by just working crazy hours, which obviously isn't sustainable.
Right.
It can strain relationships too. You might withdraw or become more irritable, and it can cause decision paralysis. Even relatively simple technical choices become agonizing because you're so afraid of making the wrong one and being exposed.
So this isn't just like a little psychological quirk. It has real, tangible negative effects.
Absolutely. Measurable effects.
And speaking of the mind, the material even touched on some of the science behind this,
Sure.
right? Like neurological stuff.
It did, briefly. It mentioned how the brain's neurological patterns react to this fear of exposure. It essentially treats it like a social threat,
Okay.
which triggers stress responses that, again, ironically, make it harder to perform well.
Huh. And what was that other thing? The Dunning-Kruger flip?
Yes. The Dunning-Kruger flip. That's fascinating.
Explain that one.
So The standard Dunning-Kruger effect is usually about how people with low competence tend to overestimate their abilities, right? They don't know what they don't know.
Right. Seen that.
The flip is the cruel twist for imposter syndrome sufferers. It suggests that highly competent people are often more likely to underestimate their abilities and feel like frauds.
No way.
Yeah. So if you're wrestling with this feeling, it's often actually a sign that you possess a level of skill and self-awareness that less competent people might lack.
Wow. That's actually kind of reassuring in a weird way. The self-doubt could be a perverse sign of competence.
Exactly. It's a really insightful point from the sources.
Okay, so given all this, how do you even start to recognize if this is what you're experiencing? What are the signs we should look out for?
Yeah, recognition is absolutely the vital first step. You can't address it if you don't see it.
So what are the flags?
Look for patterns like the attribution error. That's attributing successes to luck or external factors, but failures. Those are all on you. Proof of your fundamental flaws.
Okay, success is external, failure is internal.
Precisely. Then there's the moving goalpost effect.
Ah, right. You achieve something.
And it doesn't build your confidence. Instead, you just think, okay, well, that wasn't that hard, or phew, dodged a bullet, but now I really need to achieve X to prove myself. The goalpost for feeling competent just keeps shifting further away.
Got it. What else?
Another sign is playing the waiting game, believing you'll finally feel confident when, when you get that certification or hit that salary band or work at that cool company. But then you get there, and the feeling of confidence still doesn't arrive.
The I'll be happy when trap.
Exactly like that, but for competence. There's also the comparison obsession, constantly measuring yourself against others, but in a skewed way where you only see their strengths and your own perceived weaknesses.
Right, ignoring their struggles.
Totally. And finally, the praise rejection. Just deflecting compliments or positive feedback, maybe saying, oh, anyone could have done it, instead of actually internalizing it and letting it build your confidence.
The sources also had that helpful self-assessment idea, didn't they? Like asking yourself specific questions.
Yeah, that's a great practical tool. Asking yourself things like, how do I typically react when I succeed? How do I feel explaining technical decisions? Do I find myself avoiding opportunities? Do I constantly second-guess myself? How do I really feel about learning new tech? Excited or terrified?
Just being honest with yourself about those reactions.
Exactly. That kind of honest reflection can be really, really illuminating.
Okay, so let's say you recognize some of these signs in yourself. That's step one. The big question then is, what do you do about it? The material you shared had some really powerful strategies, right?
It did, yeah. It offered a pretty robust toolkit, actually. One of the most fundamental things is to reframe your narrative.
Okay, narrative, like the story you tell yourself.
Exactly that. It's about consciously challenging and changing that internal self-talk. So instead of thinking, ugh, I only got this job because they were desperate, try shifting to something like, my skills and experience were actually a good match for what they needed.
Actively replacing the negative thought.
Yes. Or instead of, everyone else understands this concept perfectly, I'm the only one lost, maybe try, you know what, it's okay that I'm still wrapping my head around this. Everyone starts somewhere, and learning takes time.
Challenging those automatic negative thoughts. Makes sense.
Another incredibly effective strategy is to document your journey.
Like keep diary.
Sort of, yeah. Keep a running list, maybe a private doc, a journal, whatever works for you of your accomplishments. And this isn't just like huge project launches.
Small wins count too.
Definitely. Include bugs you squashed, tricky problems you figured out, positive feedback you got, times you helped a colleague, new skills you picked up, even the small wins. This creates a concrete success inventory.
Ah, like evidence.
Exactly. Hard evidence you can look at when that imposter voice starts whispering doubts. It provides undeniable proof against its claims.
I like that. What else?
Embracing the beginner's mind. This concept comes from Zen Buddhism, actually.
Okay, interesting.
It's about approaching new challenges, new learning opportunities with curiosity and openness. Try to let go of the pressure that you should already know everything.
Be okay with not knowing.
Yeah. Be willing to ask the quote-unquote dumb questions. See mistakes not as proof of failure, but just as essential parts of how we learn, especially in tech.
Making curiosity more important than appearing knowledgeable all the time.
You got it. And community seems absolutely vital, too.
Right. Don't go it alone.
It's definitely not. Build a support network. Imposter syndrome just thrives in isolation. So connect with mentors. Chances are they've felt this too. Join online communities, dev.o, Reddit, local meetups if you can.
Find your people.
Find your people. Even becoming a mentor yourself can weirdly reinforce your own expertise and cultivate real peer relationships where you feel safe enough to be honest about struggles and get validation.
That leads into vulnerability, doesn't it? The sources mentioned Brene Brown.
Yeah, exactly. Practice vulnerability. Share your struggles, your uncertainties with colleagues you trust. Admitting you don't know something, asking for help, even sharing a mistake, it makes you human.
And probably makes others feel safer, too.
Absolutely. It creates a safer space for everyone, and it simultaneously shrinks the power of your own fear of exposure. Vulnerability as a strength, not a weakness.
Okay. What else is in the toolkit?
Setting process-based goals instead of just outcome-based goals.
What's the difference there?
So instead of focusing only on outcomes you can't completely control, like get promoted next quarter,
Right. Lots of factors there.
yeah, set goals based on actions you can control, like I'm going to contribute to one open source project this month, or I'll ask one clarifying question in every big meeting.
Focus on the doing, not just the result.
Exactly. Achieving these process goals builds confidence through consistent effort and learning, regardless of the external result. And finally, actively learn to challenge cognitive distortions.
Okay, break that down. Cognitive distortions.
These are basically irrational, unhelpful thinking patterns that imposter syndrome loves to feed on. Things like all or nothing thinking. If I'm not the world's leading expert in this specific thing, I'm a total failure.
Black and white thinking.
Yeah. Or mental filter, where you focus only on the one negative comment in a code review and ignore 10 positive ones. Or discounting the positive. Oh, that compliment doesn't really count because, or mind reading, just assuming you know that others think you're incompetent.
So spot those patterns.
Spot them, recognize them for what they are, distortions, and consciously challenge them with more realistic, balanced thoughts.
That's a lot of powerful individual strategies. But what about the environment? How can teams and leaders help create a culture where this feeling is, less likely to take root or easier to manage if it does?
That's crucial too. The sources had some great points for both leaders and team members on building, like imposter syndrome resistant teams.
Okay, what can leaders do?
For leaders, a big one is to normalize learning. Be open about their own learning curves, maybe share past struggles or things they don't know. It shows it's okay.
Lead by example.
Exactly. Also, provide specific feedback, not just vague praise or criticism, but explain why something worked well or why something needs improvement. Help people connect actions to outcomes.
Make feedback actionable.
Right. And actively create psychological safety. This is huge. Make it genuinely safe for people to ask questions, admit mistakes, throw out a crazy idea, take calculated risks without fear of being shamed or punished.
Building trust.
That's the foundation. And finally, recognize different strengths. Value all the diverse contributions people make. Maybe someone's great at communication or mentoring juniors or documentation, not just the pure technical wizardry.
Validate varied contributions.
Yeah.
Got it. And for the rest of the team members.
Team members play a big role too. You contribute by being willing to share your struggles sometimes when it feels appropriate.
Normalizes it for others.
Exactly. Actively ask questions. Don't pretend to know everything. Asking questions signals that it's okay not to know. Genuinely celebrate others' successes, maybe pointing out specifically what they did well, and offer help. Helping others actually reinforces your own competence while building team cohesion.
It all feeds into creating that safer, more supportive environment.
Yeah, it really does. And this ties nicely into that idea of a growth mindset, which the material highlights as a really powerful antidote to imposter syndrome.
Right, Carol Dweck's work, fixed versus growth.
Exactly. So a fixed mindset believes your abilities are basically set in stone. Innate. You're either good at coding or you're not.
And a growth mindset.
Sees abilities as things you can develop through effort, through learning, through persistence. Challenges aren't threats. They're opportunities to get better.
How does that apply specifically here?
Well, when faced with a tough coding problem, a fixed mindset might think, I'm just not smart enough for this. A growth mindset thinks, okay, this is hard. What strategies can I use? What do I need to learn to tackle this?
It's about the process of getting better.
Right. In development terms, it's like replacing I'm not a systems programmer with I haven't developed strong systems programming skills yet. That little word makes a huge difference.
It reframes everything from I'm not good at this to I'm still learning this.
Precisely. And practical ways to cultivate this include consciously using language like yet, reframing challenges as chances to learn, and seeing effort not as a sign you lack talent, but as the actual path to mastery.
That's a really useful frame. Now, the sources did briefly mention that, while the core struggle and the strategies are pretty similar across the board, maybe specific triggers might differ slightly depending on your role.
Yeah, they touched on that. Like, front-end devs might feel it intensely with the constant churn of frameworks.
Framework fatigue, yeah.
Back-end devs might feel it grappling with complex system architecture or scalability issues. Full-stack devs might feel stretched thin, like they don't know anything deeply enough. DevOps and SRE folks, maybe the immense pressure of reliability and uptime.
Different flavors of the same challenge.
Exactly. The specific triggers might vary a bit, but the underlying feeling of inadequacy, the fear of exposure, and importantly, the core solutions, they overlap significantly across all these roles.
Okay, so let's try and bring this deep dive kind of full circle down.
Okay.
What seems clear is that the tech industry's very nature dynamic, always changing, combined with a culture that sometimes hides the messy reality of actually doing the work. Well, it creates really fertile ground for imposter syndrome.
It really does. It's almost baked into the environment in some ways.
So if you feel it, if you're listening, and this resonates, the key takeaway seems to be, it's not proof you're a fraud. It's often actually evidence that you're engaged in genuinely challenging high-level work in a really complex field.
That's such an important point. Remember, you are not an imposter. You're a developer navigating a field that literally demands continuous learning. Nobody knows everything.
Right.
Every single expert you admire, they started out exactly where you might be now, grappling with uncertainty, feeling out of their depth sometimes. That feeling, it's a shared human experience in this work, not a sign you don't belong.
So overcoming it isn't about, never feeling doubt again. Because even seasoned pros probably have moments, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's not about eradicating doubt entirely. That's probably unrealistic. It's more about building the awareness, the tools, the resilience to manage that inner critic.
Recognize the voice.
Recognize it, challenge it, and crucially, not let it dictate your actions or define your self-worth. As the material reminded us, true sustainable confidence isn't just built on competence alone.
What else then?
It's also built on your connections with others, your contribution, seeing the impact of your work and your character, like acting in line with your values, being willing to learn and help, competence, connection, contribution, character.
I like that framework.
And there's a ripple effect too, right? By addressing your own imposter syndrome, by being a bit more vulnerable, by challenging those feelings, you actually help create a more open, supportive culture for everyone around you.
Pay it forward, in a way.
Exactly.
So the doubt might still knock sometimes.
Yeah.
But armed with these strategies, these insights from the sources, it doesn't have to be the voice running the show. It doesn't have to kill your potential or, frankly, your enjoyment of working in this incredible, challenging field.
Well said. And as one of the pieces compellingly put it, and this really stuck with me, doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will.
Wow. That's a powerful thought to end on. Don't let the doubt win.